You attract whatever you allow. That is true in life, that's true in college football, and that's true when it comes to acquiring talent in college football. And Brian Kelly, it sounds like, is working to attract dudes that want to come play at LSU because they want to play football. You want to get some NIL bags too, of course. That's today's day and age of where we're living in college sports, but at the exact same time, the main thing has to stay the main thing. The main thing on this show is college football and only college football. Every single day, that's what we talk about. Welcome into the Hard Count. This is the People's College Football Show. It is Wednesday, May 8th, 2024, the last May 8th, 2024 on the face of the planet. So we're glad that you're here with us. We got a lot to jump into, man. I just mentioned Brian Kelly brought some truth serum, some absolute bars to the table when it comes to NIL and the portal and what LSU maybe didn't do in the spring. And Brian Kelly had a pretty good explanation for why they didn't do it in the spring. So I'm excited to talk about that with y'all here in a matter of moments. When we talk about the transfer portal, though, who were the big winners from the spring window? It's important to note here, not everyone's shopping list when it comes to that spring transfer portal cycle is going to be the same. Some teams might have their fridge and their pantry a little bit more stocked. They don't need to go out and attack the portal the same way as maybe some other teams do. So we'll talk about our transfer portal winners. Speaking of the transfer portal, Dabo Swinney and Clemson were very content to just kind of hang back and watch everybody else fight over the different players in the portal and the different needs that they maybe had. Clemson, I think, probably could have gone to the portal and probably could have made a few moves, as has been the case the last couple of portal cycles. What is it with Dabo in the portal? What is it with Clemson in the portal? And when I say what is it, we know why they don't go to the portal. It's about culture. It's about principle. It's the way that they do things. But at what point in time do we maybe need to say, okay, the old way of doing things is fine, but we're in the new era of college football. The portal is no longer an option. It is a must. We'll talk about that together. Also, we got a college football take from one of y'all, as we asked on my Twitter page, put out the call to action and said, what is a college football preseason hill that you are willing to die on? It's pretty high stakes. Our guy Todd got at us. He has a take on Michigan and what he thinks they can and will do in 2024. Also, we got electric traditions. We love tradition on this show. One of the things that makes college football the sport that it is. We'll talk about that. We have some major what-ifs when it comes to this 2024 season. If these things happen, it impacts not just this team, but perhaps the rest of college football or the college football landscape as it is. All right, hey, we're glad to have you all a part of this. Make sure you're subscribed. We're also on podcast. So if you want to just enjoy this thing from an audio perspective and you just want to put it on in the car, we're glad that you are watching live. So don't stop doing that, but also you can download the podcast, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple. Just type in the Hard Count with JD Pickell, leave us a review, and the good times will keep on rolling. So let's get into it, man. The good times were rolling for a lot of these teams throughout this spring transfer portal cycle. Who were the big winners? As we say on this show, man, we honor the Talladega Nights principle when it comes to winners. Winners do what they want. So without further ado, who were the big winners from this past transfer portal cycle? I think the Ducks were winners. You're saying, JD, the Ducks only got 2 players in this spring portal cycle. Yes, that's true. But again, not everybody's shopping list when it comes to the transfer portal is equal. Some teams, they may already have what they need in the fridge. They don't need to go out and add some pieces. They saw what they saw in spring football, thought it was good enough. Oregon saw the opportunity to add some more pieces, and they went out and did just that, adding Payton Woodyard, safety from Alabama, who's a 4-star from the 2024 cycle, and Derek Harmon, 6'3", 320 pounds. Big boy from Michigan State in the middle of that defense. Derek Harmon, to me, is the more impactful of these two. Nothing against Payton Woodyard. I think he'll compete for some playing time. When you talk about Oregon and they're moving to the Big Ten, they have some pieces on that defensive line from Mateo Uiagalelei, Jordan Burch. They're going to be able to get after the passer. But if you want to win big in the Big Ten, if you want to win the whole freaking conference, you got to be able to stop the run. And Oregon did that last year, but are they going to be able to do that at the level they need to be able to win that conference title? Look at Michigan, the way that they won this conference the last 3 years. They are a line of scrimmage team. They major in the big boys up front. Derek Harmon is going to help add to that effort for Oregon in 2024. Miami. Mario Cristobal, man, it's no surprise to anybody across America that Miami was active in the portal. They were active in that winter cycle. They were active in the spring cycle. They went attack mode, added 5 transfers. That's a lot given the fact that it's only a 2-week cycle for guys to jump in there. I loved the way that Mario Cristobal and this staff really addressed the supporting cast for Cam Ward. Because Cam Ward, you got Xavier Restrepo, you got JoJo Trader, you got some guys he can throw the football to, but they say, hey, we need to get somebody that can pop the top on a defense and keep those safeties at bay. So they go out and get Sam Brown from the portal, wide receiver from Houston, one of the most explosive playmakers that was available this spring cycle. They say we need to make sure that we can keep that box honest, though, too. We don't want guys just dropping back and knowing we're going to throw it every single snap. So they go out and get Damian Martinez, who's a 2,000-yard rusher over the past 2 seasons, an all Pac-12 kind of guy from Oregon State, north and south runner, fits perfectly with that scheme. Bada bing, bada boom. Another big addition to that offense, another big weapon for Cam Ward. Then they went up and beefed up the defense. Added 3 players on the defensive side of the football, most notably for me, Simeon Barrow Jr., big boy in the middle of that defense, coming over from Michigan State, 6'3", 290 pounds. I will just say this about Miami. We've said it for a while. I'm going to make sure we get to the heart of this point right now. The Miami Hurricanes are going to have a roster to compete for and win the ACC. Now, I'm not predicting that right now, but I am telling you they have all the ingredients to get that done. You got the quarterback, you got the weapons offensively, you got the pieces on defense, you have the continuity within the scheme. Everything that you need to get it done, you now have. It hasn't always been that way in Coral Gables since Mark Cristobal got there. The first 2 years, it's about pushing that rock up the hill and getting it to a place where this roster can compete for hardware. They're there now. Make no mistake about it. They are there now. Will it happen? They got to go do it on the field. But they have the roster to get it done. Auburn, same approach as Miami. They were direct. They were extremely direct in knowing what they wanted. They went out to the grocery store, went out to your Walmart, your Target, your Kroger, your Albertsons, wherever you go shopping. Auburn went there. They checked the aisle. They knew where to look, and they got exactly what they needed. They allowed 4.5 yards a carry last year, did Auburn. It's not going to get it done, not in the SEC. So what do? They go out and add Phillip Bleedy from Indiana, who a lot of schools wanted his services. A lot of schools in their conference wanted his services. Auburn goes out and lands him. Isaiah Rakes, transfer from USC. Auburn goes out and lands him. They look at the offense. Hugh Freeze running the show this year. Payton Thorne gets another year under his belt. Cam Coleman looks great in the spring game. But if you're an Auburn fan, you're like, man, we love that we got this true freshman who's going to be a baller for us this year. But do we really want to just depend on that one guy to be the game breaker for us? Hugh Freeze says, nope, don't worry about it. Goes out and gets the most explosive playmaker, I believe, in the transfer portal. The best wide receiver available in Keandre Lambert-Smith coming over from Penn State. Averaged 13 yards of reception last year. Auburn now is a player in the game when it comes to adding talent. Hasn't always been that way at Auburn. During the Brian Harsin era, let's just be real, they had the administration and the boosters and Brian Harsin pulling like 3 different directions. There is now real synergy at Auburn. There is vision. There is a resource pool there to acquire top talent. And also, there is momentum. People saw what Auburn did last year and the way that they played some of those big dogs in college football extremely close. Now, there were some hiccups, obviously. The New Mexico State game, you hate if you're at all associated with Auburn. But at the exact same time, if they start winning out there on the Plains, if they go out and pop like a 9-win season this year, that is going to pour some gasoline on that thing out there on the Plains. So Auburn, definitely a portal winner for my money. Oklahoma, kind of similar to Oregon. They didn't necessarily go out and, take everything they could find on the shelves when it comes to the portal, but I think they packed accordingly for their move to the SEC. You're going somewhere cold, you pack a lot of jackets. You're moving to the SEC as a conference, you go and make sure you have the big boys up front to get it done. Oklahoma acquired 3 different individuals all in the line of scrimmage. 2 on the defensive line, 1 on the offensive line. Branson Hickman was the offensive lineman they acquired from SMU. He's going to be a player for them, I believe. Dominique Williams was the have-to-get-it kind of guy that they had from this transfer portal cycle. They won his commitment over Texas, as we mentioned on yesterday's show. Last year, Oklahoma, they were decent against the run, allowed, I believe, right around 4 yards a carry. It's not horrible, but it's not going to get it done in the SEC. So you got to be able to stop the run. Dominique Williams now is going to help in that effort. The big 6'2", 320-pound defensive tackle from TCU was an honorable mention for Big 12 Lineman of the Year last year. And they went out and got someone to help beef up that offensive line and help protect young Jackson Arnold his first year in the saddle in a line of scrimmage conference where you better have somebody that can protect your quarterback. UCF, man, they're a transfer portal winner. And it's funny to talk about UCF because we talk about, these big brands in Oregon and Miami and Auburn. Like, hey, UCF, Gus Malzahn, they're cooking out there in Orlando. do not sleep on the Knights, man. They went out and acquired 9 transfers from this spring transfer portal cycle. Penny Boone was the big get for them, in my opinion. He's the guy that had over 1,400 yards rushing last year at Toledo. He jumps in the portal during the winter, transfers to Louisville, ends up not being a fit there for whatever reason. He's now transferred to UCF. They also got the corner from USC, Traquan Fegans, and they also added the edge from Miami, Nigel Kelly. I don't know if UCF is going to win the Big 12. I don't. I mean, Utah's in that conference. Arizona's in that conference. Kansas State's in that conference. But I'll just say this. They are going to be an absolute pain to have to play because their roster talent is higher than I think a lot of people realize. You have a quarterback that can do the job for you in KJ Jefferson coming over from Arkansas, and they're going to be well coached. They're going to have a great offensive scheme in place with Gus Malzahn. They play Arizona and Utah in November. Both those teams have to come to the bounce house. Don't sleep on UCF. Again, I don't know if they're going to win the whole conference, but I feel pretty confident in thinking they're going to have a chance to ruin somebody's chances to win the conference. So UCF, without question, a portal winner for us from this spring cycle. So to review, Oregon, Miami, Auburn, Oklahoma, UCF, in our eyes, portal winners. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. All right, so if you were tuned into the socials last night, Brian Kelly sat down, did an interview with some local media out there in Baton Rouge. Really, really good conversation. But he had a 1.5 to 2 minute clip addressing how LSU has attacked the portal and utilized NIL. And I think it raised a lot of eyebrows. It was music to my ears personally. He brought some bars, but don't take my word for it. Listen to what Brian Kelly has to say here when asked about how LSU is using NIL in the portal.
The D-line, interior D lineman, where are you right now with that?
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because, you know, we're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, you know, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place. If you like all the things that we do here in developing our players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fan base in America, playing for championships, and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get paid, this is not the place for you.
We are not in the market of buying players, says Brian Kelly. And I think the first response from the naysayers and punchline culture, they saw this clip and they said, oh, you know what? LSU's broke. They must not have money to go out and get the talent they want to get. And to that, I would just say, does that really make sense to us? Like, do we really think a school in the SEC with the engagement from a fan base that is LSU, we really think they're hurting for cash? I personally don't see that. What I see is Brian Kelly just being transparent about their approach. And he was honest. He's like, listen, we missed on some guys. Like, we wanted to acquire a defensive lineman in the transfer portal. That didn't happen. Now, it didn't happen because we weren't willing to go out and drop a bag to get a player to sign on the dotted line with us. And I think, honestly, what we said at the top of this live show is what I want us to bring home here. You attract what you allow. And Brian Kelly is saying we don't want to just drop a bag and get someone to sign on the dotted line. We want to engage, develop, prepare for the next step, which is the NFL. We want to have real relationships. Like, we want to be able to have the entire person and player aspect of bringing someone to LSU covered when they come and play here. We don't want them to come here just for some zeros. And I would say that's exactly the way that you should go about it if I were running my own program out there in college football. Now, granted, Brian Kelly has forgotten more than I could ever know about college football. Let's make sure we're clear about that. But I think when you look at the future of NIL and the future of talent acquisition, I think what Brian Kelly is saying and what Brian Kelly is doing is the sustainable model. Because if money is your motivating factor, that's great. It might allow you to land a couple more transfers, but is that really what you want the end-all, be-all to be for your football team? Because, again, if money is the motivating factor, if it's all about the zeros, well, then your satisfaction comes when you get that NIL check. Satisfaction doesn't come when you win that New Year's Six Bowl game or you make the college football playoff or you win the SEC. Those things are all nice, but, again, if that wasn't your driving factor, well, then how much are you really putting into the team? How much are you really putting in when nobody's asking you to come to a workout or asking you to go 110% at practice? Those things add up. Those things detract from your culture. And we've seen this now multiple times over the course of the playoff era and even in the early sample size of the NIL era. Culture ultimately still wins. Like, you got to have talent. That's a prerequisite to get in the door. But if you have talent and no culture, forget about it. Maybe you're an 8-win football team at that point. So for LSU now going forward, they are clearly looking to attract players that are prioritizing the main thing, which is football. And I think the thing that I love so much, where I was really like, yeah, Brian Kelly, get him, when he was really dropping some bars, in my opinion, is when he was saying this isn't just like some sales pitch of, hey, we're going to make sure you take a discount to come here, and if you come here eventually maybe you'll be able to make some money at some point and get drafted. He's like, no, if you come here, there is proof of concept that we are going to develop you and get you to the league to make some real money. Three first-round draft picks this past season. 3 linemen on the defensive side of the football drafted this past season. We're not just selling you this vision. Like, this actually happens if you come to LSU. So if you want to go somewhere else and get a bag on the front end and then, what happens with the development happens, more power to you. But we will develop you and get you to the league here at LSU. And so guys that are football-minded, guys that want to win football games, guys that want to play in the NFL and achieve their potential, they're going to hear Brian Kelly say something like that, understand that there's still a multitude of NIL opportunities in Baton Rouge, and they'll sign up for that, and Brian Kelly and LSU are still going to win a whole lot of football games. Again, this is the sustainable model. Because when you talk about money being your motivating factor, going back to that point here, how much money is enough money? How much money is enough to say, you know what, I'm good? Now, you might have a number in your head if you're a player when you sign and say, that's what I want to sign for. Okay, great. What happens when you have a good season? What happens when your role expands? You want more money. Heck, what happens when just that number gets old to you? There's a point in time where money is no longer satisfactory. You need more money. And if there's more money that's being demanded by the player, that's not a problem that you want to deal with in your locker room, period. So all in all, Brian Kelly, he brought the juice. I love that he came out and said this. I don't think that he is just saying this to cover up the fact they didn't get the defensive lineman they wanted in this transfer portal cycle. I think he was keeping it a buck, and I think that's truly how they operate in Baton Rouge. They're not saying they don't play the NIL game. They're not saying we're not still going to pay you. They're not saying you can't still earn all the money that you want to and create value for yourself here. But if money is your motivating factor, that's not the game that we're playing. You can get paid, but if you want to get paid, you better make sure that you're playing football, and that's the main thing for you here first. That's going to be the winning formula. I truly believe that. Over time, people are going to see the number of draft picks that Brian Kelly has at LSU. They're going to see the success that he has at LSU, and that's going to be what they sign up for. Not the zeros, not the NIL dollars. It's going to be the fact that you can go and help yourself win a lot of football games and become an NFL prospect. They proved that. I just loved it. He brought the bars. He said, Brian Thomas, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. He's like, those guys, they all came to LSU. We developed them, helped them take that next step. So hat tip to Brian Kelly for keeping it an absolute buck on a situation in a topic in college football that has become a little bit of a tricky thing to navigate when coaches are asked about that. What are the biggest question marks in college football? I'll rephrase that. This is a better way for us to start this segment. College football in the 2024 season is going to have a lot of wild things happen. We already know that. We already understand that. But I thought it'd be appropriate for us as a college football community to unpack some of the major what-ifs that this sport has to offer. and what ifs and all these questions we're asking right now, yes, they impact the team specifically, but I think these questions that we're going to ask and these potential scenarios that could happen are specific to these teams that will then impact the landscape of college football. They'll send a ripple effect across college football that will change the game as we see it. So, first what if that I think would have a massive impact on college football. What if Ole Miss wins the SEC? Now, according to FanDuel, they have plus 650 odds to win the conference. And yes, it would mean they probably beat a team like a Georgia, like a Alabama, like a LSU, like a Texas to win the conference. And it would mean a couple of things. One, it would mean that we probably got some really epic moments from Lane Kiffin, like the sound bites that he would give us in that kind of run, I'm sure would be off the charts. At the very least, some really pithy Twitter moments for us. Jackson Dart, probably in the Heisman conversation. They win the SEC. Who's to say he doesn't win that whole darn thing? But I think the massive impact and the ripple effect, if Ole Miss wins the SEC, forget the national championship. If they win the SEC, we will rethink how we view building a roster in college football. I've said this a lot about Ole Miss. I draw the comparison a lot to Roger Bannister when he broke that 4-minute mile barrier. For those of y'all that are unfamiliar, Roger Bannister, the first man to run a mile under 4 minutes. Prior to that, the thought was if you run a mile under 4 minutes, the human body, the human heart will explode. You will die. It can't be done. Same thing is being thought right now when it comes to the transfer portal. Yeah, you can use the portal. You can have some pieces that you add to your roster and be able to be successful that way, but you can't win a real conference championship that way in the SEC. You can't go win a national championship that way. If Lane Kiffin goes out and wins a conference title in the toughest conference in college football with taking 20 transfers each of the last 2 years, they will have shattered that glass ceiling and they will have broken that 4-minute mile barrier. Now, the national championship conversation is a whole other piece in itself, but the ripple effect would be even more massive if Ole Miss were to go out and win a national title. But I think the SEC specifically is the conversation I want to have around Ole Miss because all the things I just said, the difficulty of winning that conference, the teams you would have to go through, and the way they've built their rosters. Georgia, they use the portal, but not the same way Ole Miss does. Same thing with Alabama, same thing with Texas. They'll definitely use the portal, but it's not something that they necessarily rely on to the same degree as Lane Kiffin and those folks out there in Oxford. Teams have done it in the ACC. We saw Florida State do it, but to do it in the SEC, I think it'd be a game changer. I think you'd have a lot of folks, a lot of personnel departments across college football kind of reevaluate how they build their roster and if they need to lean more heavily on the portal. Another big what if here. What if Notre Dame doesn't just make the college football playoff, but they make an actual run in the college football playoff? I'm talking like they end up winning 2 or 3 games in that thing and find themselves in the national title game or in that semifinal game. It would obviously be massive for Marcus Freeman. Like that would be even further validation for the people in South Bend that made the move to hire Marcus Freeman as the head coach when he was extremely young and for everything that he's built and everything that he's challenged to push the envelope there. And that's huge. Like Notre Dame as a whole would be extremely excited. That fan base would be fired up, be great for them. I think what would be even more impactful for Notre Dame, should they make a college football playoff run, the major impact for me is what happens optically to Notre Dame. Because I think right now it is sort of an unspoken feeling across the high school recruiting level that Notre Dame, story program, massive brand, but if you want to go achieve your goals, if you want to go achieve your dreams and play for a national championship and things like that, well, you got to go to SEC school. You got to go to one of those big boys in the Big Ten. If Notre Dame goes on that kind of run and they remove that sort of veil that people have over their face when they're viewing Notre Dame, I think it would pour gasoline on their recruiting efforts. Their recruiting efforts have been solid the last couple of years. Had a number 11 class in 24, had a top 10 class in 23, currently a top 5 class in 2025. But if they're able to make a deep playoff run, I think folks would have a lot more confidence in signing up to go play in South Bend, to go play for Marcus Freeman. And I think they make that jump from solid to borderline elite when it comes to those final recruiting rankings during National Signing Day. And that's kind of the difference maker right now for Notre Dame in my mind. Got a lot of really good players, got a really good staff. But if they want to compete for national titles consistently, it's going to take a top 5 class and a top 3 class and a couple of classes stacked on top of each other to get it done. So in my mind, if you make a deep playoff run, change the optics around Notre Dame, I think the optics for recruits would change drastically, and the recruiting rankings for Notre Dame would also change drastically. Here's a big one here. What if Florida and Billy Napier win the state this year? So I'm talking Florida, that first game of the year when Miami comes to the Swamp, they beat them, and they finish the year with a win at Doak Campbell against Florida State. Now, the conversation probably goes to, well, what's the rest of their record? Because they still have a Hunger Games schedule, JD. I understand that. Just ride with me here when it comes to this thought that they could win the whole state. The first is the vibes internally would be massive in Gainesville. If you're able to beat Florida State and Miami, the feeling is, okay, this is going somewhere. Like we've heard the last couple of years about how it's a job that you're having to rebuild and kind of tear down some old practices and get some bad out to get some good in. It's a process, and we've heard that, but now we actually see some real return on investment. Also worth noting, Florida State and Miami, they're viewed right now to be, I think, both college football playoff contenders and definitely the top of the ACC. I think the big thing here is if Florida is going to beat Florida State and beat Miami, and let's say that those are 2 wins in a 6-6 season. 6-6 to me, you're having a little bit of a conversation where you're not sure what happens next with Billy Napier. Because 6-6 is a 1-win improvement from the year before. It's the same record you had going into your bowl game in year 1. Like you're kind of a little bit, I think, not sure what to make of it. But if you have 2 wins over your in-state rivals, obviously it helps recruiting. It helps the way that recruits view Florida long-term. But also I think it's kind of that benefit of the doubt. Because, again, Florida right now is viewed in most college football circles as the 3rd best team, depending on who you ask around how they feel about UCF, maybe the 4th best team in the state of Florida. I personally think that they could erase all that doubt if they were to go and beat Miami and Florida State this upcoming season. So optically, would be massive for Billy Napier. I think it would buy him another year, if we're going to be honest, and I think it gives him that benefit of the doubt when it comes to that 6-6 season. Also worth noting, if you beat Miami and Florida State, I don't think you have a 6-6 record. I think you are probably good enough to get somewhere in that 7-8 win category. If they win 8 games, Billy Napier is keeping his job, even with how ridiculous that schedule is. Last what if for you. What if Auburn beats Alabama in Bryant-Denny and wins the Iron Bowl? Think about how we viewed the Alabama-Auburn rivalry over the course of the last, 15 or so years. The thought has always been, well, we know who Alabama is. If it's in Jordan-Hare, weird things happen, like Auburn might be able to win a game that way. And I'm not saying that Auburn's never won at Bryant-Denny. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is right now, with how we view Auburn and Alabama, our opinions of both of those schools going forward is more malleable than it has ever been. Like, we don't know what Auburn's going to be long-term. We definitely don't know what Alabama's going to be long-term with someone new at the helm in 17 years with Kalen DeBoer running the show. Like, we don't know with either of those schools just yet. And so if Auburn, in Kalen DeBoer's first year, Hugh Freeze and co. go into Tuscaloosa and get a dub, I think you're looking at Hugh Freeze and saying, whoa, they're doing something out there. Because last year there was kind of some, that they came close against Georgia, really should have beat Alabama on the final play, didn't get it done. And it's a talking point of hope, right? Well, there's no hope if you actually do it in Bryant-Denny this year. There's no hoping. It's, okay, now we're doing. Now it's happening. And you're saying, okay, Auburn, are they the team in Alabama? Are they the team in the state of Alabama? It's hard to argue against that if they just beat Alabama at their place. And I think also, as I said with a lot of these things, the optics and the way it impacts recruiting, think about how many times we've seen Auburn and Alabama be the last 2 hats for a 4 or 5-star kid on National Signing Day. Happens a fair amount. But if Hugh Freeze can make that extra pitch and say, well, we did beat Alabama this year at Alabama, you pick who you want to play for. I think that recruiting sales pitch would be a massive, massive feather in the cap for Hugh Freeze. And I think that could really start to change the tide, no pun intended, for the direction of Auburn football and their ability to acquire talent. So we'll keep an eye on all these what-ifs, but those are just a few of the what-ifs that I think could change the college football landscape here in the near future. What if Ole Miss wins the SEC? What if Notre Dame makes a playoff run? What if Florida beats Florida what if Florida beats Florida State and Miami to win the state of Florida? And what if Auburn beats Alabama in Bryant-Denny to win the Iron Bowl? It's all just what-ifs right now, but the beautiful part about college football is we will actually get to see all these things come to fruition, or all these things not come to fruition. One way or the other, we'll get an answer in the 2024 season. You got to love it. You absolutely have to love it. Quick cough break. And we're back. And we're back. All right. Let's keep on rolling here now. We've talked a lot about the transfer portal really over the course of the last 2 weeks. Pretty obvious. The transfer portal's been open. Had some big names jump in there. Had some big teams make some big acquisitions. But a team that is routinely out of the transfer portal extravaganza every single year is Dabo Swinney in Clemson. Once again, not really using the portal. And I understand they've taken a one-off guy here or there, or they took a quarterback, I believe, a couple of years ago that was at Clemson out of high school, and then he went to Northwestern, then he came back to Clemson. Like, you hear what I'm saying. Clemson does not really use the portal. And I don't think that there's so much pushback on Clemson not using the portal as there's pushback on Clemson not using the portal and then not getting the results that they've come to expect. Clemson did not have a bad year last year by most college football team standards. They went 8-4 going into the bowl game, won the bowl game, had a 9-win season. Like, you know how many teams would kill to win 9 games? Not to give Colorado a stray here. You know how much Colorado would kill to win 9 games? They would love to have that. But for Clemson, it's not what they're used to. It's not the standard that's been set for them over the course of Dabo Swinney's time out there at Clemson. They made the college football playoff 6 years in a row. Like that's been what they expect. They expect to compete for national titles and make the college football playoff. Now, they won the ACC 2 years ago, so let's make sure we have that out there. But the problem, again, isn't the fact that they're not using the portal. The problem is they're not using the portal and not getting the results that they expect to have. Now, Dabo not using the portal isn't a new thing. Nobody was complaining about him not using the portal when they were reeling off college football playoff appearances. But the fact that they've missed the college football playoff now, the last 3 seasons, it's becoming more of a talking point, becoming more of an issue. And my issue, probably to take it a step further, is that you're getting beaten by teams that are making a point to use the portal. The way that it looks to me is you're being passed by other teams that you used to pretty much just beat every single year, and now that's not the case. Florida State, they beat you with a bunch of transfers this year. Keon Coleman made the game-winning grab for a touchdown. He was a guy that was in the portal that Clemson, I'm sure, very much so could have made a play for should they have chosen to. Miami, I understand that it wasn't a bunch of transfers, but they still used the portal, and they're going to be a better roster this year because of what they've done through the portal over the course of the winter and spring. NC State, they used the portal. They beat you. And so you're starting to see this trend where it's like, if Clemson were to go to the portal and have a Keon Coleman, does that Florida State game look different? Because I think, to me, the portal is really 2 things at the end of the day. First, the portal is a tool. The portal is a way for you to give yourself a better chance for success. The way that I think about it, you can do your math homework for our college audience that's probably finishing up finals now or graduating. Shouts to y'all. You can do your math homework and do mental math and still get the right answer. It might take you a lot longer, and there's a lot more of a chance that you will have some errors in there if you're just doing mental math or trying to work it out on paper. But if you use a calculator, you're going to have a larger percentage chance of getting the right answer and probably have capacity to do more. Now, it doesn't mean you're smarter, doesn't mean that you're better, but you know how to work a calculator, you know the right buttons to press, you're going to have a better chance at success. Doesn't mean you have a right culture, doesn't mean that you have better coaching staff, but if you're able to use the portal, you're going to help yourself have a better roster talent level going forward. Dabo Swinney could use the portal and still be successful and still have a solid culture and still have a good coaching staff and still keep all the things that he cares about intact. I don't think it's a thing where you have to just throw away culture for the portal. In fact, I would say the opposite. If you have such a strong culture, you could add 3 to 5 guys and have your culture that's already strong internally absorb those 3 to 5 players, have them buy into what you're doing, and go forward from there and have a better roster talent level. So the portal, again, is a tool. It's a tool to make your roster better. The second part of this, and Andy Staples, I think, made a great point during his reaction of Duke versus Clemson. You all saw that game early in the season. Duke beats Clemson, and we're talking about, well, what if they had used the portal? Andy Staples said the portal is really used to fix recruiting mistakes. So the way that I think about it, the portal is a way to make things right. The portal is like an apology. Hey, we missed on this kid. Hey, we missed at this position. Hey, we don't have enough depth here. Let's go to the portal and remedy that. The portal is kind of like an apology. And in 2020 and 2021, Clemson had 2 top 5 classes. So in theory, they should have had what they needed, right? Well, it worked out that they didn't based on what they haven't done these last couple of seasons. So let's go out and fix that if we're Clemson. The portal is an apology. So if you want to keep enjoying these champagne problems, if you want to keep enjoying champagne, you got to have the roster and the depth to be able to enjoy the college football playoff appearances, right? It's no longer a situation in college football where you can maybe use the portal, maybe not use the portal. It's not an option anymore. Everyone and their mama that is winning at a high level is utilizing the transfer portal. And so going back to the portal being an apology, like, I think the portal is a need for all schools for sure, but I think the question might draw a little bit deeper with Clemson of like, okay, well, why are we having to apologize so much? Why don't we have what we need at receiver? Why aren't we able to create explosive plays down the field? Did we miss at the high school level too many times? That in itself, I think it needs to be reevaluated and be readjusted. So the obvious thought forward now, and the thing that I think most Clemson fans would tell you is, well, if we win big in 2024, we're not even talking about this. And I think that's true. Like, if you win the ACC, you make a playoff run, the volume on this portal conversation gets turned down tremendously. That's 100% true. The approval rating for Dabo Swinney, not that it was ever in question, but it definitely gains a few more points. But I think anything short of winning a national championship, there is always going to be this question for college football fans and Clemson fans alike of, well, what if Clemson went out and added that one other piece to change the game in the fourth quarter in that national title game so they could score an extra touchdown? Like, you see what I'm saying? You live in this area of constant what if. What if we had Keon Coleman against Florida State would be the question I would ask. And I'm not saying that Clemson was ever interested or could have even landed him. I'm just saying if you had someone of his caliber, that game is different. If you go out and land a couple other pieces on offense or pieces on defense to change the game in that one situation, that one hypothetical, does that give you a different result? And so, again, I think as long as they're not winning national championships, people are going to say, are we doing all we can? Are we doing everything that we need to do to win a national championship, to have the roster to win a national championship? Because if we don't, if we're not doing that, then what's this all about? And again, expectations and reality, that equals happiness to me. Like how much the gap is between those two things. If you're just expecting to win 8-9 games a year, you can do that and not use the portal. Clemson recruits well enough. They have a big enough brand. Dabo Swinney is a good enough coach to where they can make that happen. But if you're expecting to compete for college football playoff berths and compete for national championships, I think you need to play the game everyone else is playing and acquire top talent that becomes available for your roster via the transfer portal. Last thing I'll say here, there sometimes becomes this talking point whenever Clemson the last couple of years has stumbled and lost a game or two of, well, it wasn't always this way. There wasn't always these expectations to win national championships and win the ACC. Like when Dabo Swinney got to Clemson, Clemson was not what they are now. They were a middle-of-the-road ACC team. They were trying to make a bowl game every single year, try to win 8-9 games. Like that was a good year at Clemson. But I think it's tough to say, well, it wasn't always this way, and complain when you're held to the standard you've created, and then just have that standard you've created and sticking to it. Like, low expectations is not a gift. It should be a privilege that people expect you to win the ACC. It should be a privilege that your fan base expects you to go and compete for national championships. It doesn't mean that when you fall short that you need to have this conversation and have this pushback of, well, this is how it used to be. Doesn't matter how it used to be. This is how it is now. And you've elevated your team to a certain place to where you can compete for those things and are expected of those things. That's a privilege. So I have an issue with the thought that there needs to be pushback on Clemson fans expecting too much. There's always extreme portions of fan bases. There's always extreme 10% of either side, whether it be hyper optimistic or hyper pessimistic. But I just happen to believe that the pressure that Dabo Swinney has created for himself is a privilege, and I cannot wait to see how they respond in 2024. But again, for my money, I would love, love, love to see Clemson just add a couple more players, a couple more talented pieces to help them get back to where they expect to be and where that fan base expects to be. You do not need to sacrifice culture for talent via the portal. All right? So that is what it is. So we had a call to action on my Twitter page, or X page, whatever you guys want to call it right now, and I asked y'all, give me a college football preseason take that is your hill that you are willing to die on. My man Todd responded in elite fashion, and he says that Michigan is going to make it back to the Big Ten title game. Todd's not even saying they're going to win the thing. He's saying they will make it back to Indy for the Big Ten title game. Is that going to happen? How do we feel about that? We'll talk about it right now, but first things first, make sure you are subscribed if you're watching via the live show. We love y'all. Thank you for being dialed in. Subscribing to the channel is the best way to make sure you don't miss anything when it comes to this show. If you are more of an audio enjoyer, you want to listen on podcasts, we got you covered. All right, full hour-long episodes on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Type in The Hard Count with J.D. Piquel. We got you covered there. All right, just subscribe to that feed, and we'll make sure you're getting taken care of. So we're going to keep on rolling here, as I was mentioning. Todd says Michigan makes the Big Ten title game. That's the hill he's dying on. The over-under win total for Michigan in 2024 is 9.5 wins. Now, if we're getting to Indy, my gut feeling is you probably have to fall on the over side of that. 9-3, I suppose you could maybe find your way in, but 10-2 I think is a much more ideal situation to be in. We're not even talking about the college football playoff. But if we were, they play Texas week 2, and that's going to be a tough game. But outside of the Texas game, I don't think their schedule is as bad as maybe it could be. There's no Penn State. There's no Wisconsin. They'll kind of be sneaky. They play USC at home, Michigan State at home. They get Oregon at home. Their really only tough road game that I'm seeing right off the top is at Ohio State. Now, that game obviously is what it is, and we all understand what that game entails. To be able to make it to Indy, I think that Michigan really needs to, at the very least, split. If you go 2-0, you're in there for sure, but they need to split Ohio State and Oregon. Those are the two toughest roster tests. Those are the two toughest, coaching matchups for them. Like, that is going to be the two games that are going to define if they make it to Indianapolis or not. Now, I'll say this too. Outside of those two games, I think Michigan has a roster and a staff in place and an attitude and a culture in place to where they can roll the ball out there, probably win 9 games. Like, yes, you'd like to win 12, but you can probably just have a floor of 9 games and feel good about it. Why? Because they're going to be more physical on both lines of scrimmage than anyone they match up against. They're going to be better coached than anyone they match up against. I know some new pieces are there on that staff. I don't care. They're still a better staff than most teams are going to play. And honestly, going back to that physicality element, we saw what they did against Penn State. J.J. McCarthy, as good as he is, he handed the ball off for 25 plus, 30 times in a row. I don't think that's going to be the game plan for them in any game this upcoming season, but they can do that and win 9 games is the bottom line here. Now, the difference maker to getting to 10 and 11 wins comes with the kind of styles they can fight. Because I think you look at Michigan, if it's a wrestling match, it's a grudge match, they are going to make you submit every single time. They're too physical, they're too big, they're too experienced, all the things that I just mentioned. But what made Michigan so dangerous and made them the Big Ten champion the last couple of years is the fact that they could hit you with a haymaker, get you with a little right hook and knock you out, and that was something you didn't see coming. They had a couple of tools in the bag, a couple of different styles. So my question is, do they still have that right hook? Do they still have J.J. McCarthy throwing for 9 yards an attempt? Obviously, it's not J.J. McCarthy, but it's going to be Alex Orji or Davis Warren. Now, full transparency, I think it's going to be Alex Orji for a number of reasons. But I think with what you need to get to the Big Ten title game, again, just to get there, we'll talk about them winning the Big Ten in a second. Just to get there, I think Alex Orji has that right hook for you. He has that explosive element for you, but it might not look the same. It definitely won't look the same, I should say, as J.J. McCarthy made it look for you. Because his game was more, we're going to push the ball downfield on play action. When there's money on the table, we're cashing in. And it wasn't just J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, it was Roman Wilson. It was Cornelius Johnson. But for Alex Orji, his right hook, yes, he has to throw the football, but I think the difference maker with him is when he tucks it and runs and gets around the edge on that read option, or it's a quarterback design run, however you get the football in his hands, he can legitimately hit a home run for you anytime he gets the rock. There's not a lot of quarterbacks in college football that can do what he does with the ball in his hands. He is that good of an athlete. And so what that does to defenses, anytime we're in the gun, anytime it is a read option and we got the mesh where the ball is in Donovan Edwards' stomach and Alex Orji's reading his key, the defense can't just commit to Donovan Edwards. The defense has to have attention divided to whoever is going to carry the ball, whether it's 10, whether it's 7, whoever it is back there in the backfield with him. They have to give the proper attention to the fact that he might tuck the ball and run. And if you don't, he's going to tuck in, like I just said, hit a home run against you. So to get to the Big Ten title game, I think his legs are the difference maker to get there. I really believe that. If they dial it up for him and he takes care of the football well enough, they're going to be able to get there in that sense. Now, if they want to win the Big Ten title game, they got to be able to have that extra year throwing the football downfield. And that's the big question mark. That is the million-dollar question all Michigan fans have going into this upcoming season. And not just with the quarterback, but also with the playmakers. A lot of that production from last season, a lot of those pass catchers from last season, they're gone to the NFL. Colston Loveland, phenomenal, arguably the best tight end in college football coming into this upcoming season. But I don't know if he's the guy that's going to pop the top on a defense and make that box stay honest. How much extra juice do they have in the pass game is the ultimate question. Because in those games against Oregon, those games against Ohio State, I'm not saying Michigan won't have the edge up front, but I am saying it's going to be a little bit more of a grudge match. Like, you're not going to win every snap against that Ohio State front seven. They're too good. They're way too good. Oregon, I think they're going to be pretty solid up front too. They're going to be it's going to be an absolute bar fight in the box when it comes to those two teams facing off. So do you have something extra over the top at quarterback and at the wide receiver position to be able to get it done? Right now, Michigan has plus 550 odds on FanDuel to win the Big Ten. That's the differentiating factor for me to actually win the conference. So Alex Orji and his legs, how they utilize him, that's going to be the factor in getting there, in my opinion, and them being able to push the ball downfield will make the difference in them winning the conference. So, Todd, we appreciate you bringing that to the table, brother. Great take, and if that's the hill you want to die on, be our guest. It's funny, too, man. There's so much that's new with Michigan. I think they're like 128th in returning production out of 134 teams. Still, FanDuel recognizes what they have on that roster. FanDuel recognizes all the things that they did last season and who's still there. Maybe they weren't starters, but Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Will Johnson. A lot of pieces there to still make some moves, and that's why their over-under win total is at 9.5. So we're excited to watch that in 2024. All right, get your thoughts, questions, concerns in to Big Nick Break, about to join the show here in just a matter of moments. On this show, we love and we value tradition. We think it's electric. We think it is something that differentiates college football from any other sport in existence, college or pro. And I want us to just kind of take a moment right now together during this segment to talk about some of our favorite, most electric traditions in college football. Now, there's 134 different teams at the FBS level. All of them have electric traditions. This is not an all-encompassing list. So there's going to be some things that I leave off this list. It does not mean I don't think they're incredible. It just means this segment isn't going to last for 3 hours, which is what it would take to unpack all of those. So one of the most iconic electric traditions that there is in college football for me, Virginia Tech with the Enter Sandman theme going as they enter. Like, that is something where not all broadcasts, when you're watching a college football game on TV, will capture the intro and the lead-in and the build-up to a game. For Virginia Tech, they do. Why? Because it's cinema. They're counting the decibels. They got the guitar going. Dun-na-na-na-na, dun-na. Like, when that gets rolling, I don't care who you're a fan of, unless you're a Virginia fan, and this changes things a little bit. That gets the juices flowing. It gets goosebumps going. It gets hair standing up on the back of your neck. Like, you may have not played ball for double-digit kind of years. You're ready to go run down on kickoff and break the wedge. I understand the wedge isn't legal anymore, but that's the kind of juice that Virginia Tech and Enter Sandman, their entrance in Lane Stadium, brings to the senses. So that's absolutely, for my money, one of the most, if not the most, electric tradition in all of college football. Here's one that gets slept on for me a little bit. West Virginia. Good folks in Morgantown. Fighting Pat McAfee's. When they sing Country Roads by John Denver and that whole stadium's just belting it out, there's something within you, like the heartstrings a little bit just kind of get tugged on. And it's sort of one of those moments where you're like, oh, yeah, this is college sports at its finest. This is why we love college football. There's a lot of moments for why we love college football, but I think if you were to bottle that up and show it to someone that's never even seen college football before, they'd be like, oh, wow, this is a really communal thing. Yeah, it is. It is. And, like, you just see them, like, with their arms around each other, and you just hear, like, the beautiful melody from John Denver, Country Roads. Like, that's special. That's absolutely special. So we love that tradition. Absolutely electric. Gets the emotions flowing a little bit when you talk about college football and those traditions. This is one that I think doesn't have quite as much shine, but something that I got to experience firsthand, at least viewed it firsthand, when Baylor runs the line. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. It is like the college football equivalent of the running of the Bulls. What the running the line is for Baylor, for those of y'all that are unfamiliar, every home game, they circle up the entire freshman class, all wearing their like yellow mesh jerseys that say Baylor and like a nickname on the back. Anyway, they get them all corralled into like this small runway, I suppose, and then they like do this, I guess, starting motion. They tell them all to go, and they run from one end of McLean Stadium all the way to the other to make this entryway for the team when it comes out. And it is like the most bizarre minute and a half you've ever seen in college sports, because you got all these freshmen. So one, there's already a lot of juice flowing because they're happy to be on the field. It's a game day, like vibes are high, but also they're like tripping over each other. Some people wear costumes. You see people get trampled. Like if you are a fan of field storming, this is like diet field storming, but it happens before the game. Special thing. Love to see it. Baylor running the line. Slept on, but very electric tradition. Ohio State dotting the script I in Ohio, or dotting the I in script Ohio. That's cool, dude. That is very, very cool. I was fortunate enough. We got to be there in Columbus for the Michigan game 2 years ago, and you get to be down on the field pregame if you are with the media, which I was like, this is incredible. I've never done this before. This is so cool. And so I didn't really know when you were supposed to go back up to the press box, because it's kind of a, hey, at this time you should go up. When there's this much time left on the clock to go back up to the press box, that's when you should go up. And nobody is like telling you, hey, get up there. Like nobody's kicking you off the field. So I'm like wandering down there for the better part of an hour or so before the game starts. And I start to realize, like, one by one, different people with media credentials around me are starting to move up to the press box. And so long story short, I ended up getting stuck down there for pregame before kick. And I was down there at field level when they're doing the I on script Ohio, when they're dotting the I. That stadium, the entire shoe is like vibrating. It's shaking. Your ears are starting to like reach a level of taking in sound that you've never heard before. It is a wild experience. The pure energy that's pulsing through that stadium when you dot the I of script Ohio, much less against the team that you hate more than anything else in the face of the planet, that's a special thing. Dotting the I of script Ohio is electric. A couple others I want to get to here. When Tommy Trojan puts the sword into the heart of the Coliseum, that's pretty cool. There's a big build-up to it. He kind of walks out of center field. One, again, you don't see quite as much because Pac-12 football, rest in peace, didn't get the same shine as maybe some other schools did. That's going to be one that I think is maybe more slept on, but a lot of fun still. And then running through the power tee. We saw this for the night game against South Carolina. They're in the all-black uniforms, and when that thing separates and they run out through the power tee and there's fireworks going off, like that is one of those moments where you're like, wow, okay, this is college football. Like, I love the NFL, the NBA, like those are all great sports, but there is nothing that has running through the power tee that is able to encapsulate that amount of energy and that amount of passion into an entire stadium like what that presents. So a lot of great traditions, a lot to get excited about. That's not the only traditions that I think are electric, just so we're on the same page. There's a lot of great ones. Maybe if y'all like this, we'll do more of it. But, yeah, at the end of the day, college football is the greatest sport on the face of the planet, and those traditions are a tremendous reason as to why. All right, let's get to some of y'all's questions and y'all's thoughts in the live chat. Bringing on the keeper of the queue, the man making the show happen. Big kickball game today. If we don't get rained out, Nick Brake. Nick, what's going on, baby? How we living?
It's going to get rained out.
Okay. I like to see the optimism. That's good. Positivity. Vibes are high.
We're going to get floods. It's going to, like, legitimately flood here in Nashville.
You know what's not canceled? This show. Not canceled. We just keep on going.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, though, about the kickball.
It's fine, but it does stink because there's a chance I have to miss our playoff game depending on what the NIL Elite Series looks like later this May.
Yeah, okay. It's tough. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Your teammates are going to have to pick up the slack, you know?
Yeah. We'll see. Anyway.
Doesn't sound like we're feeling too good about what they're gonna bring to the table there.
Hey, how about this question from Willie T, who said earlier in the show he's a fan of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. I asked everyone what their favorite team was. I hope that's true. Says, how sneaky can Syracuse be this year? Maybe next year, too.
Kyle McCord, Fran Brown, they could be sneaky. The ACC to me is just so wide open. You don't know what NC State's going to be. We talked about Florida State and Miami earlier in the show. We talked about Clemson in the show. Like there's a bunch of question marks from a roster perspective to where I don't know if Syracuse is going to win the conference, but I think they're definitely a team that's going to be in that bowl conversation. And they're building something out there at Syracuse. Fran Brown has taken the blueprint from what he learned at Georgia under Kirby Smart and trying to implement that into what they got going out there in Upstate. So don't sleep on Q's, baby. Don't sleep on Q's. That Carrier Dome, man, gets rocking.
Yeah, I love the Carrier Dome. I like how horrible it is for basketball. It's just kind of fun.
It's wild they do that. Yeah, it's wild they do that.
But I love it. Acrylic says, why is Missouri flying under the radar? They have an easier schedule in the SEC, and they're returning a huge amount of their offense.
My question with them is they had so many games last year. I think it was like 4 games last year they won by 1 score, and you lose your all-purpose everything in Cody Schrader. So not that they can't recreate that, but that is something that doesn't necessarily carry over all the time, those 1-score wins. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but I understand the hesitancy to buy into what Missouri was last year as it translates to this year. But don't get it twisted. Eli Drinkwitz is phenomenal. Brady Cook's phenomenal. Brady let him cook, probably one of my favorite players in college football. Luther Burden's great. So they got a lot of talent on that roster. I'm just not so sure that it's going to carry over from year to year if it's a linear progression for them.
Yep, absolutely. King Epic says, JD, is there a team that no one is talking about, other than, of course, Syracuse and Missouri, that you think could make a run similar to TCU a couple of years ago? I don't know, JD. I think this new format might actually make that a little harder to do.
It's going to, as you hit it on the nose there, Nick. Yeah, I think it's going to make it a lot harder to get that done. Teams, though, that are maybe getting a little less juice right now, I think the Big 12 is like the team that, or the conference that's getting looked over the most. Arizona, Utah, Kansas State, all 3 of those I think would be a pain to play in the college football playoff, especially if Kansas State has like the Avery Johnson magic working and Dylan Edwards on the read option and all those things. Like there's a lot there that I think could be just tough to match up with. We'll just say the Big 12 as a whole is getting overlooked. They're going to have a playoff team, obviously, but how much noise they can make in that thing is one to watch for. Do not fall victim now to just the big brands, the big brand syndrome of the offseason with Ohio State and Michigan and Georgia and Florida State. Like, we're going to talk about all those teams, obviously, but I would say keep an eye on the Big 12. Very, very sneaky conference this year.
Okay. Yeah.
I love it. What do you say? One more, Big Nick?
I've got 2 more. Is that okay?
2 more it is.
Jared Stidham says, which college tradition is at the wrong school? That's a funny question.
Which college tradition is at the wrong school? Gosh, that's tough. That's so tough because I don't want to say they shouldn't have a tradition. I'm going to plead the 5th there. Do you have anything there, Nick? I don't have a college tradition that I think they shouldn't have. You know?
I don't know. That's a tough question.
I have to think about that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I have to think about that. That's a good one, though. You would think maybe – I'm trying to come up with an answer after I just said I don't have an answer.
It's at the wrong school.
I mean, I will say this. I understand that Auburn and War Eagle have been a thing forever. Mm-hmm. But Auburn is the Tigers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I will leave it at that. No, nothing else I would say, but I would wonder if there's not maybe maybe the Eagle flying is at Georgia Southern. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe we let the Tiger run out on the field, which could cause a world of problems if we're Auburn. I get it. It's tradition. I love it. I almost put it in the most electric traditions, period. But that is one that you're like, huh, I wonder how we got here, you know?
Yep. That's a good one. I also think, and not to hurt anyone's feelings, but it's kind of funny that Alabama plays Dixieland Delight before their games, and that's a song that is explicitly about Tennessee.
Sure.
I know it's written by Alabama, the band, but I think that's kind of funny.
I like it.
Let's end off on OG Gary.
I love
it. He says, this is not a college football question, JD, but how are you? How is life? How are you doing mentally? Nick, you also answer.
That's a great question from OG Gary. Look at OG Gary. Not what are we doing, more so how are we doing. You have an answer to that, Nick? I want to give you the floor here to talk a little bit on all those things.
I'm fine. I'm doing pretty good.
You're good? You mean kickball? I can't imagine that. I mean, I'm trying to put in my head how we can get you to that playoff game. I guess if they win in the playoffs, you get to be there next week. Is that an accurate statement?
I'm still in the regular season, but they pushed games back a week, so that's why there's a chance. But I still have 2 games.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
1 through 10. 1 through 10, how was Nick Break?
I'm at a hard 6 or 7.
Okay.
Just
6 isn't great.
Just hanging out.
Okay. Well, we'll unpack that more.
Midlife crisis, maybe.
Midlife crisis. Quarter life crisis.
Yeah, at 24.
There we go.
No, I'm doing good.
There we go.
Movies are kind of okay right now. April was good. May's been 7 days, but
What's the best month so far for movies?
April. Civil War, Challengers. It's a pretty good month.
Wow. Okay.
But like the early months of the year are never good. So
okay,
we'll get there.
Okay, so we're trending this way.
Yeah.
By December, like, hey, we're firing on everything.
Yes, that's award season.
Award season.
Coming, but yeah,
good stuff.
It's sad that my mood is dictated by like how good the movies are coming out, but here we are.
It's okay. That's all right. My mood is often dictated by college football. So, it is what it is. It is what it is.
Michael Scott's like, cable TV's a bust. Yeah.
When I discovered YouTube, I didn't work for 7, or what do you say, for a whole month.
Yeah, something like that.
I love it.
That's how I feel too.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, OG Gary, I'm good, man. Yeah. Appreciate you asking. This show is a blast. I genuinely feel like I have the best job in the world, which is tremendous. Going to see the brother graduate this weekend, so I'll be out in Waco watching him do his thing, walk the stage. That'll be dope. See some family.
Yeah, very
Vibes
nice.
are high, man. Vibes are very high. So I can't complain. I can't complain.
Well, good. Yeah. Hey, we're running along. This show's awesome, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I like to think so. Of course, I'm a little biased. But I think we do good work here. That's good stuff. Well, hey, Nick, what do you say? We finish strong tomorrow. We will pray the rain holds off. You'll go solo shot tonight, maybe a couple solo shots tonight out to deep right field over the fence. And we'll just, we'll keep rolling. What do you say? Same time tomorrow.
I'm not playing tonight.
Okay, there it is. There it is. Nick Break. See you, brother. Cool. Hey, we appreciate y'all being dialed in, man. This is so fun. This is awesome. This is awesome. College football is the greatest sport on the face of the planet. And that's not just something we're saying because we get to do a college football show, but we're saying that because we would feel that way even if we didn't have a college football show. We felt that long before we had a college football show. And so the fact that our passion for this intersects now with a profession in doing this, luckiest people in the world. Pinch ourselves every day waking up. So we appreciate y'all making it happen. We appreciate y'all supporting this show and making it what it is. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the podcast feed. And tune in tomorrow, man. We got a lot to jump into tomorrow. Talking favorite players across college football. We're not journalists. We're not journalists, so we have favorites, all right? So we'll talk about that tomorrow, and we'll have a good time doing so. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We are going to keep this party rolling as always, and we will see y'all next time.